afternoon, good evening, and good night for all those coming to watch my first long form. Today I will be displaying linear search. Now, looking at this code, some of you might feel overwhelmed. Some of you have probably never even seen this function before, or some of you don't even know what is going on here. It's okay. Today I will explain to you what linear search is and how my code works. Linear search is a code example in which it'll look at each and every individual value inside of your list or array in this case, and it will determine if that is the value you asked for. The issue with linear search is that it's really slow. Upon larger lists, it takes a really long time, and it has O to the power of n squared execution time. So it's not very fast. But that doesn't matter because for small lists it's pretty reliable. And something linear search can do which binary search can't is work with unsorted lists. So it's always a great tool to have in your back pocket. Let's start taking a look at my code. First line, define linear search array value colon. This basically creates a function which is just this. That's the function, and anything that happens in here can be replicated later on. An array is just the list of numbers that I'm looking for, and the value is going to be the value that I want. So all that does for it, we can say, is creates a function. Then afterwards, we have this line. This line, what it does is that it loops through all the elements in the list. It just starts taking a look at the length of the array you have, and it gives an index value to everything in that array. This, we can just say what I said before, loops through every value in list. Now, you should be able to follow along with me, copy down this and this if you're building your own code. Or you could just pause the video here and go ahead and add your own comments and then check with me as to if what you are writing is correct. Okay, now that you've unpaused the video, the next line here, if array is equal to value, it's just saying that if the current value is equal to the target that you put in. Like let's say in the list it finds the number 2 when you asked for it to find the number 2, it'll just stop there and say, look, I found it. Then what it does, it'll return the index at which it finds it. So it checks if the value is equal to the target. That's all that this line does. Almost broke cheeks there. Then, as I said, this line here basically returns the index value at which that integer, in this case floating number, was found at. So just returns index. Actually, I'm just going to say, yeah, returns the index at which the value was found. Then, if after looping through the whole list it didn't find the value, it'll return -1. If it can't find the value you were looking for, it'll just return that. And this is important as it is for our output section here. Now, this line of code is pretty self-explanatory. It just asks you to input a list. So that's what I'm just going to say it does. Asks user to input a list of numbers. Then, after that, here is our first tricky line. Most of you haven't seen the dot replace function or the dot strip function before, but it's pretty simple. The dot replace, this line, basically all that it does is that it makes it so that the program can handle both commas and spaces. If, for example, if this wasn't here and I made it so that this code can only work if the list is separated by commas, if I made it separated by spaces, the whole thing would shut down saying, sorry, there's an error, I can't separate this list properly. What it does is that it cleans out your whole list with this dot strip function. If your list, for example, was one space 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 two space 2 space 33 space 4 space space, it'll just clean this all up. So there's just 1 2 2 33 4. It'll just clean it up to make it look like that. So all that this does is it cleans up the lists and makes it so that the program can handle both commas and the spaces. Up next, we have this line. This basically makes it so that the it turns the input list into a list of floating numbers. It converts the string of numbers that you put into here into multiple substrings with the dot split function, and then it converts each index value with this float here into a floating point number. So this converts a whole, for example, it'll convert a list which looks something like, for example, oh wait, I forgot my hash, which looks something like 2 comma 3 comma 4 comma, for example 3, into something which looks more like its own individual thing. 2 comma 3 comma, and you get the idea. That's all that this line does. It just turns the input list into a list of floating numbers. To a list of floating numbers. If that term is unfamiliar to you, a floating number is basically a decimal number. It's also called a real number. And the difference between a floating number and an integer is an integer is a whole number, like 1, 2, 3, but a floating number is 2.0, 2.1, 2.2, anything with a decimal in it, and it's float. The reason I'm using a float here is so that my program can handle both integers and floating numbers so that it doesn't crash. Value, it just asks you for the value you're looking for. Oh, asks for a value. This line here, this basically, now this is where we use our function. This is the function that we set up over here with the array and the value in it. Over here, we've now set it up, and now we're using it and putting it and storing the result we get into this result variable. So this carries out linear search. This is all that it does, not complicated. And finally, over here is what it does. It outputs the result you got. Now here is where that -1 comes into play. Remember the -1 up here. If our result does not equal -1, i.e. we actually found the value at which it is, then what we do is we use an F string and print out that the element, the one which you were looking for, the value that you entered, right here, is found at this result, which is going to be your index value, whether that be at index 2, index 4, index 5. Do beware that in Python, indexes are not labeled, the index values you give something is not going to go 1, 2, 3. It starts off with 0. So when it does say index 7, don't go to the 7th number, look at the 8th number. That's how it works, okay? And that's all that this does. Outputs result. I hope you had a great time, and I will put this code in the description of the video for you to look back to. And if you do have any questions, just ask ChatGPT. It's better than me at this. However, I hope you had a great time following this. Your code should work, and if it doesn't, as per usual, Google the answer or just check it with my code because I know this one works. Let's run the code. Wait for it to recognize the whole set of hashes that I put. Here it is. Now let's put in a list here. Let's go 2, 3, 4, 2, 1, 4, 5, 66, 4, 3. Okay, here's our list. And what number do I want to search for? Let's go for something like 66. Only one that stands out. Then look, element 66 is found at index 7. The code works. Now, goodbye. Hope you have a great day and enjoy your coding experience.